I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Chloe Domont, who makes her feature directorial debut with the psychological drama Fair Play. Chloe, first of all, let's set the scene. You got this dream of making your first feature. All the
Mhm.
blood, sweat, and tears that go into a passion project.
Yeah.
And then it screens at a festival, Netflix picks it up, and the critics really like it. So talk me through that weight of expectation and how difficult it is to get a film like this off the ground and then seen by people.
Um, well, I mean, it was, I think that, the way everything panned out was amazing, really. And I mean, it was kind of, it was, it was a magical experience, and it was really a dream come true. Just, I would say, obviously the big sale was great, and the reviews were exciting, but I would say first and foremost what was most important to me and most exciting was to feel the energy of the audience and to feel the energy of that room, and knowing 5 minutes into the movie that they understood the movie and that they were hooked. And I think that, like, that's the greatest accomplishment, that I think that I could have had coming out of this, is that people felt exactly what I wanted them to feel, and the intention paid off in that way. And I think more than that, it was really I made this film to start conversation and debate around the subject matter, around these dynamics. I'm a filmmaker who believes it's not enough these days to just make a good movie. I think, there are so many good movies out there, but it's like I can watch a good movie and then 5 minutes later, I'm not thinking about it. If it's not saying anything, new, or asking new questions, or holding a mirror up to an audience's, face and getting them to look inside. And my intention was to create something thrilling and riveting and entertaining, but ultimately asking important, tough questions that I don't think have been asked.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack in Fair Play about gender and sexual politics in the workplace, and of course in relationships. And this film's really good at laying bare the power shifts between a couple. Power is probably not the best word, but I think you know what I'm getting at. For example, I really love that you've peppered in a lot of little things that telegraph what might happen later on. That's a sign of a really interesting and compelling script. So let's start off with that. What inspired you to write this particular story about this couple when you first embarked on writing the screenplay?
Mhm. I mean, this was something, a subject matter that I guess had been compounding inside of me for years, and subconsciously. And I think that over the years, as my career started to take off in commercials and television, it was this feeling that I was having over and over again in different relationships. And it was this feeling that every time I got a new job or opportunity, my first reaction wasn't excitement, it was fear. Because the partner that I was with at the time wasn't doing as well, or wasn't happy with where they were at. And it was just always this unspoken tension in so many of my relationships, that me being big made the men that I was with feel small. And it just got to a certain point, after experiencing this kind of over and over again in different shades, how much hold these ingrained power dynamics still have over us today. And how we're all afraid to talk about it. And I think the reason we're afraid to talk about it is because we don't even want to acknowledge that that's what's really going on. I didn't even want to acknowledge that is what was going on in my relationship, because what would that say about me, and my choice of partner? And the men that I was with would never want to acknowledge that my success, made them feel bad about themselves, because what would that say about them? After all, these were progressive men in progressive cities. and it just, so that is what really propelled me to writing this story, which is we're in a post Me Too world. Now what? there are still these things that we're dealing with. And I think given the climate, given the fact that we're in a state where people are afraid to say anything, you know what I mean? I think it's actually just made it worse and just pushing these things down. So my biggest thing with sitting down to write the script was kind of just sounding the alarm and saying, you know, these are kind of emotional terrors that I've been experiencing and normalizing. And I know that other people out there are too. And this is something we need to talk about.
Absolutely. And as I was following this journey between this couple, and you know, Luke starts off feeling really happy for his fiancée that she's doing so well, but there are cracks immediately. And I thought, oh, please don't go down that road, Luke. Come on, be a bigger man. But of course, that's actually the whole point of this film. And I wonder then, there's so many examples where I was like, are men okay? What is going on with like the strip club, the smug analysts in the office, the guy who's bashing his office with a golf club, while that corporate music from the seminar is playing? I love that. What do you think? Well, are men actually okay in this world where, as you say, post Me Too, a lot of them are thinking, now what about me?
No, I think we're at a crisis of masculinity, not only in this country, but around the world. I mean, this is the first time that girls are surpassing boys in education. I think almost 2 to 1. I read that statistic recently across the world, and women are surpassing men in the workforce and in many different fields. And I mean, all my female friends make more money than their male partners. You know, so this is really the first time that we're really seeing that power flip in a really amplified way. But we're not prepared to deal with that because we don't know how to talk about it, because it just feels like, you know, it just feels like a subject matter that is off limits. You know, I think it's because it's tied in some way to the male ego. And I think that women are, you know, in many ways afraid to confront the male ego because you know, we fear that like a wounded male ego can have devastating consequences, you know, not only in relationships, but also in professional, you know, environments. I mean, there's so many times in, you know, work environments where it was like, I was tiptoeing to just, you know, protect my male colleagues and, you know, just cause I even, you know, you know, and sacrificing things about myself to protect their ego because I just felt like I need, you know, who knows what would happen, you know?
Yeah.
But you know, I just think, and this is why I made the movie, is because I wanted to show that Luke represents many generation of men, I think, that are caught in the middle between adhering to a modern feminist society, but still having been raised on traditional ideas of masculinity. You know, but I want to be clear that like, I don't think that Luke having those feelings are his fault. Like, this is the way he was raised, and this is the way that we continue to, you know, society continues to raise, I think, boys, you know, for the most part across the world. We continue to raise boys believing that masculinity is an identity, you know, that success is a zero-sum game, that your self-worth is based on how much you achieve. So it's like you get to a certain point in life where it's like if you're raised on those values and you're not the breadwinner, right, and you're not achieving in the way that you are, and all of that is a reflection of how, you know, or should be a reflection of how successful you are, or that's a reflection of how much of a quote unquote man you are, you know, then it's just there. I just feel like there are all these generations of men just left not knowing what to do or where to go and or how to feel about it. And since there's never also been a platform for men to express themselves in any way, it's you know, it's created a lot of tension that I think gets pushed down, but then because it gets pushed down, it comes out in really poisonous ways and really passive aggressive ways. And you know, in the case of my film, I obviously push it for the sake of drama. But it can be, you know, there can be pretty explicit ugliness to how that can come out.
Yeah, and Alden's performance is so good because there are moments where I feel for him, I empathize with him, but he does such really horrible things, and it made me think
Mhm.
if this is like Mad Men fast forwarded to 2023, it's an aspect of that corporate culture that many of us have experienced. If we were all really emotionally intelligent and perhaps maybe we're brought up to think that you don't have to be in fight or flight and masculinity is not, it doesn't have to be so fragile and you're worried about what people might be thinking about you and your success,
Yeah.
maybe we might all be in a better place. And then I wondered, after watching your film, how difficult is that though to put across in a screenplay where you are, as you say, trying to tell a story, you want the drama, you want people to be compelled by the story, but you're also
Mhm.
trying to give these actors some stuff to chew on where not everything is black and white, not everything is that simple and reduced.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's really what I set out to do is to show that these things are complicated and it's not one or the other. And like I said, like Luke is not he while he grows into becoming the villain, I think that for him having those feelings don't make him a bad guy, right? He's dealing with things, or he doesn't know how to deal with his pain, and he doesn't know how to deal with his insecurity,
Mm.
right? And he's struggling and he's suffering, and but I really wanted to lean. It was important to me in the script, and it was important to me with the performances that we lean into that struggle and we show that struggle, and we also show that this is a man in pain that doesn't know how to deal with that. And I felt like the more that we leaned into that, the more interesting version of the film this would be. I think there was a version of the film where I could have villainized him much earlier on, and I don't think that would have been as interesting. There's also a version where she could have just been much more the stereotypical victim, and I don't think that that's interesting either, because what I was also trying to show was how women are kind of forced to play ugly to survive in those kinds of worlds, and especially in that kind of work environment with those kinds of men. What she has to do to kind of stay in the boys club, is becomes a kind of ugly reflection of what she's kind of turning into in many ways, and while she's reacting to what's going on, but I wanted to show that it becomes this kind of toxic bubble, right? And I definitely wanted to stay away from this idea of it being black or white. And anytime that I could kind of lean into um something that we did feel a little more empathy for Luke, I thought that was just going to be more interesting because it's the more human version of the story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like how we all live. Things are so complicated in every facet. Emily is not flawless, and as she shouldn't be. And it made it so much more interesting when she says to her colleague, rebuking her colleague who suggests she's got a thing for Luke, that she doesn't shit where she eats. Well, she kind of does. And, she can be defensive and cocky and dismissive and make bad choices. And as you say, it's because they all start to spiral in this toxic bubble. And so then I wonder, what kind of guidance as a first time director, and you have experience obviously in TV, this is your first film, it's a huge, huge achievement for you. What do you do on set with two actors who know what they're doing, but you want to make sure that they're not going in one way or another way too much, and you want to try to rein them in? Is that a difficult thing to do?
um I would say, I mean, I forget whose quote is it, but I mean, really, like, half of directing is casting, if not more, so it was really, I cast the right actors, where it wasn't like I had to worry that they were going too far in one direction or not. I think that I cast two actors that really understood the script, and they just always they already went in on their own with the right temperature of how a scene should go, and then I would, of course, actually come and push them farther. I never had to rein them back. Like, it was actually, I was encouraging, sometimes, just them to go just even farther. But it was, we also, I think the biggest thing in terms of, like, I think rehearsals were everything for this film and the process. So I think that I you know, and sometimes it's not always possible with the budget. And like we didn't like this was an indie movie. We made this on a budget. We did not have the money to you know we had to cut corners in every possible way. But I did go into this film telling my producers that rehearsals were crucial for me. And so we had a week of rehearsals leading up to the film, and that was not only you know, a moment for us to just bond and get on the same page, but also we were able to rehearse 80% of the scenes and work out the kinks and get the right temperature together, you know, while still, you know, allowing for on the day to then play and go in different directions. But you know, I just preparation, I think, is everything. Preparation is everything. I prepped the fuck out of this movie. Like I can't even tell you. I think because I knew that this was my shot, you know, and I had been directing in television for many years. And, you know, while I'm super grateful for those experiences, like my goal has always been to write my own scripts and direct my own films. And so like this was I put an enormous amount of pressure on myself to make something that reflected me as a filmmaker and reflected the kinds of stories that I wanted to do. But I, you know, it was so I prepped because I'm like, I want to reduce the risk of failure at all costs.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, like that was like literally mapping out and shot listing everything and even, you know, and drawing diagrams for everything with my DP and writing down the performance, how exactly I wanted the performance to go at any given moment. And also honestly, like too, having the edit in my, like I would not only have a shot list underneath, I would say how I would want the scene edited so that when we're in a crunch, because, you know, we're an indie movie, we're inevitably going to be, you know, running an hour behind or whatever it is. We might not be able to go overtime because we can't afford it. I would have to cut certain shots, but I'd have to know exactly how the scene is going to be cut to be able to know which shots I could cut or which setups we could lose, or, you know, depending on how it went. But or yeah, just knowing how one scene would transition into the other scene, I think is invaluable that some directors don't always think about, you know, how are we going from this scene to the next scene? And if we're ending on a close-up of Alden, we don't want to start on a close-up of Alden the next scene, you know what I mean? But just thinking about that and knowing how it's all flowing into each other so that I would create this film that felt like this ballooning tension that builds to a point where it explodes. And then once it does explode, this idea that then it becomes a dogfight. So what does the dogfight look like and the pace of that and everything. But I just honed and had like on paper how the film would turn out. And so that's how I built up my confidence going into the film, believing that it would work because I had done all the prep and I saw it and I was like, okay, I feel like I have the finished version of this film on paper, you know, and it's something that I want to see as an audience member. So I felt like that gave me the confidence going in, and it also allowed me to pivot when certain things came up quickly because I had done all the work. So I knew that, you know, that we could actually go right or we could go left because I knew where we were going.
It's so fascinating. It does sound like a lot of pressure. I was thinking about at the end, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the film, go watch it, come back. When Emily says to Luke, you know, if I can't make you cry, I'm gonna make you bleed. It reminded me of the beginning of the film when she's bleeding. I found that really powerful. It hit me straight away, that telegraphing that connection between the two beginning and end scene. And then you cut to black when she's really going to start laughing at him, like the pathetic, simpering idiot that he has become. Why did you do it that way? Why did you decide to revisit blood as a theme and then end it on that note where she's like, psh, and then laughing?
Yeah. So for me, the ending is where genre and the meaning kind of come together in one final confrontation. And I set out to make a thriller about power dynamics between men and women on the ugliest level. So, there was an element that I definitely, I definitely twist the genre, to service the story I wanted to tell. And but I do believe that no matter how much you kind of you bend genre, you still have to pay it off in some way. So, because I was working within a genre that uses violence as a means to solve conflict, for me, it always kind of had to get to that level of violence. But in terms of like the meaning behind it, the ending for me is about Emily reclaiming the power that Luke takes away from her when he sexually assaults her. um and I think that the scene, I guess, the scene didn't have to get violent if he had just shown one sliver of accountability for the brutality that he inflicted on her. But this is a man who we've seen is incapable of that, and that's what causes all this pain and destruction over the course of the film. He's a man who's running from facing his own failures and his own weaknesses, and putting blame on everyone else, and feeling like she genuinely robbed him of something that he deserved. So this is a man who just refuses to face any of that. And and for Emily, it's like, after enduring so much emotional abuse, verbal abuse, and physical assault, she's pushed to the limit. And I think what really kind of triggers her outrage and picking up that knife is the fact that he's acting so normal in the very last scene, after all the madness, after everything, after barking in the office, all his stuff, that literally she's sitting there and he's going, yeah, so that coffee table's mine and that bookshelf is yours, and I'm gonna get some movers to, like as if they're having a very normal breakup, and she's just, that is what triggers her fury and her rage over the injustice over it. And the only way for him to see, what she's seeing is to use physical force. But for me, it's like the ending, the violence is only a means to get to where I needed the film to get to, which is when he gets on his knees, bleeding, and finally mutters the words, "I'm nothing," and breaks down for the first time, acknowledging his own failure, his own inferiority, and his own weakness. Because ultimately, more than being a film about female empowerment, this is really a film about male fragility. So for me, it always had to end there. And unfortunately, it had to get violent to end in that place. So yeah. And then I guess in terms of like the laugh at the end, the exhale, it's that's the first time that she can breathe. That's the first time and that's also the first time that I wanted the audience to feel like they could breathe, as I was like strangling them over the course of the film. But it is that kind of thing where it's like you go through you have these toxic experiences, and then and they almost destroy you. But sometimes there is a kind of sick, fucked up irony to it, where it's like, how did I ever love this person, and there's a dark humor to that. So I think that's what I was going for with that final exhale and that final laugh, when you're on the other side of that abuse.
Wow, that's so fascinating. I wish we had more time, but in the meantime, Chloe, thank you for your
Yeah.
time and insight today, and congratulations on your first feature. It's so
Yeah.
good.
No, thank you so much. No, it was a really great conversation. I appreciate it.